Hello everyone and welcome to the video, and this is my late, but hopefully great Mario Galaxy movie review, because, the movie's been out for a while now, and it's even gotten on streaming, but hopefully that just means that everyone has gotten a chance to see it, so if I bring up some spoilers, which might happen, everyone has already seen the movie, so it won't really mean that much. So, sort of just starting out, I just want to say it's kind of interesting to me because they went for, making a Mario Galaxy movie. And, everyone was thinking, oh, it's going to be something like a Mario World movie or some kind of just Super Mario Bros. Movie 2. And everyone's like, oh, they're going straight to Galaxy? That's really weird. And I was just kind of like, well, if Nintendo knows what they're doing, Nintendo knows what they're doing. And if they don't, they don't. I don't really care. I just want to see what the next Mario movie is going to be, because it was just exciting to see where they would go after this. And so I'm glad that, we finally got to see it. So starting out with the actual review, I'm a big fan of Mario games and the Mario franchise in general. And it's not just like, oh, the old games or the new games. I've played like loads of Mario games and I really like Mario. And so, I knew a lot about Mario, going into this movie. And I watched the first movie, so I knew what had happened, prior to the events of this movie. So I was ready to see this movie, it's definitely a movie that if you haven't watched the first movie at least, and also if you don't really have a connection with, the Mario franchise, you're probably not going to get it as much as, someone who does. So I can easily see that being something that people would find a bit, like, strange, they should, like, oh, they could have made it more appealing to general audiences. But honestly, I mean, after the first Mario movie's success, they probably just assumed that everybody would, know about Mario. And since more Mario games, were being sold after the movie came out, they probably thought it didn't really matter that much. And so, when it comes to the actual movie itself, one of the things I really like about it is that it's far more Mario feeling than the first movie. The first movie, it started out and it was like, yeah, it's an origin story for the Mario Bros. And so therefore, you have to get through the whole Mario and Luigi getting used to the Mario world. And they spend like a majority of the first movie doing that. Like the first 15 minutes of the movie, it's mostly just Mario and Luigi in the real world. And even when they get into the Mushroom Kingdom, it's mostly Mario, and somewhat Luigi learning about the Mushroom Kingdom and, how it actually functions and how it kind of, works. And that's not really a bad thing. It's just that it's only until about like the last 15 minutes or so that it really feels like a Mario movie. Like it's really becoming Mario feeling. The whole thing is a Mario movie, but I'm just saying that it's like the last part of the movie, that's when it really becomes like, oh yeah, this is a Mario movie, everyone is functioning in Mario positions. And even then, it's still like an origin story, so it kind of has to end with Mario and Luigi becoming the Super Mario Bros. And so now you're finally moving on to the next movie. It's like, how does that work out for Mario and Luigi? And this movie really just stays in the present, like what happened after the first movie. Mario and Luigi, they're both, the Super Mario Bros. They're going around, saving the day in the Mushroom Kingdom, and it really does just feel like they have faithfully adapted, Mario into this movie far more than the first one in terms of just general Mario essence. You got Mario and Luigi, knowing how the power-ups work. They know Peach and they know about Bowser and they know, they meet Yoshi and he's like, a very, quick introduction. So it's like, they know him and then they know Toad and it's like, everyone here is like, they all know each other, and so it really does just feel like Mario. And the thing about it is that, because the characters know each other, it feels like you get a lot more, like, Mario interactions, and much more of the characters being, their normal selves, because they're not like, oh, whoa, the Mushroom Kingdom, or, oh, this crazy character that I have no idea who they are. It's like, oh no, everyone kind of knows each other, and it's kind of like, they have a lot more, chemistry now, that actually kind of, is much more fleshed out in this movie, because there isn't this whole origin story thing getting, like, in the way of it, which I thought was pretty good. And also, I think everyone can kind of agree that the animation is really good. I mean, for, a Mario movie, they really went all in for it. Like, you might think, oh, Mario movie. The first one looked really good, but we were kind of wondering, how are all the other movies going to look in the future? And like, it's good to see they're keeping up the good quality of like how it went from the first movie. Like they're actually improving the animation, improving like the spectacle, the cinematicness of it all, and keeping the world, it feels like Mario, but it's in like movie form, and so you can like really enjoy the Mario-ness of it all. And so, I feel like overall, it really does just feel like a much more Mario movie than the first movie. But, of course, that kind of comes with some additional mixed thoughts from, like, everyone. And so I'm just going to give my opinion on them. And one of the main things that I think everyone talks about is the story. And everyone's saying this movie has, like, no plot and no story. And it's just a bunch of just stuff happening. And there's just no story at all. And I kind of disagree to an extent, because there is a story and a plot. I think the main thing that was missing was there wasn't really much of like character arcs in the movie. Most of the characters don't really learn a lot of stuff, and they don't really change that much. I mean, they do have moments of like, especially Bowser, he kind of tries going from being like trying to be good to like kind of going back to being evil, which is kind of funny because it's like the opposite of how you would think that character development would go. But I do think that if you take into consideration the fact that the first Mario movie was all about Mario and Luigi becoming the Super Mario Bros., the Galaxy movie does actually show you, like, hey, this is what happened after they became that way, and, how does that actually work now? This whole movie is about kind of, discovering, how Mario and Luigi are, how they approach the Mushroom Kingdom and have now become, like, kind of native to the Mushroom Kingdom. And so I do think that technically they have, like developed as characters. It's just this is more about like, what happens after they develop. That's kind of what the point of them in this movie was. And I mean, when it comes to Peach, I guess they really want to just resolve some of her, origins and, where she comes from, so she can basically not have to think about that in future movies, hopefully, and just be, able to actually just, go through her, future adventures with, not having to worry about that all the time. And another thing is that this movie has a lot of random stuff happening in it, and a lot of like coincidences where it's like, oh, this thing just sort of happened to happen, and so then all this other stuff sort of happens, and it all seems sort of just very like coincidental. But I mean, I think a lot of movies are like that. They're very coincidental. Like, the first movie, like Mario and Luigi never even had to end up in the Mushroom Kingdom in the first place, and so it's like, that was just a coincidence that they happened to go through the wall at just the right time and just the right place to go on this Mario adventure. And so it's like, it's kind of like for most stories, coincidences are like a major thing. That's not me trying to say this movie doesn't have them. This is just me saying that I don't think it really hurts the movie overall. Like, I think it's something that I can sort of like just, not really have to like, think about too much as like something that's ruining the experience for me or anything like that. And there's also like the pacing. And I think it's just that they didn't spend much time in the different situations. They kind of just moved from one thing to the next. And it didn't really confuse me that much or be like a problem. I mean, maybe it's just because I played the games and I know a lot about Mario. And so, I kind of just knew what most of the things were. But for someone who didn't, maybe it's a lot more strange. But I didn't really seem to mind the pacing that much. And so, yeah, like, overall, it's a really good movie, in my opinion. It's even, like, great in a lot of ways. I understand the criticisms, and I'm not trying to say it's a perfect movie or anything like that. It's kind of just that I feel like, this is kind of what I was, like, really wanting out of the first movie. Like, a lot of moments just feel like, yeah, this is, like, really adapting Mario into a movie. It's really just taking the games and putting them into movie form and adding like more visual flair and more dialogue and more just like amazing like moments that are really only possible in a movie format. And I really think that has lots of value for me as a Mario fan. If you're not a Mario fan and you're just somebody who might have liked the first one or something, but, not really for anything Mario that it did, yeah, I could see you not really thinking this is that great. But as someone who's a Mario fan, and it's not like this movie is like just watching random stuff happen. There is a plot and there is story, and so I feel like I'm not saying that if you don't like it that you're wrong. I'm just saying that like, I personally liked it. and thought it was a really, fun and, great movie. And that's the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.